There's a building on State Street that predates the Erie Canal. There is a documented military battle that took place within sight of this road. There are federal purchase records showing the United States government buying property here in 1936. There are National Register listings on this street. And there are congressional records renaming one of its buildings. State Street is not decorative. It is one of the most historically documented corridors in St. Lawrence County. Today, tonight, right now, we're walking it. Well, virtually, because it's really cold right now and I don't feel like walking up State Street. But we're going to walk through it year by year. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Street Sign Storytime, where we drive all over this beautiful place. And when I see a street and it just needs to be talked about, well, I just need to. I've been up State Street plenty of times in my life, and I said, you know what? I don't know why of all the days that it feels like it's the day, but, well, today's the day. And we're going to jump back into State Street right here on Street Sign Storytime. Before, it was Augsburg, New York. It was Fort de la Presentation. I know I'm not French, so I probably butchered it, but you know what I'm saying. And it was established in 1749 by French missionary Abbé François Piquet. I feel like that's close enough, right? This was a French mission and a military post serving both native allies and French colonel. Well, they had interests along the St. Lawrence River. After the French and Indian War, which was, 1763, the British then took control. After the American Revolution, American ownership was solidified under the 1794 Jay Treaty. By the late 1790s, the settlement was renamed Ogdensburg after landowner Samuel Ogden, who held very large tracts of the land in the region. And did you know it had an H at the end? Probably did. But either way, State Street, it didn't exist yet. But the riverfront settlement that would create it absolutely did. Then in 1808, David Parish, a wealthy German-born financier, operating out of Philadelphia in Europe, purchased approximately 200,000 acres across northern New York. Documented in land records and even in early county histories, Parish was instrumental in developing Augsburg as a commercial hub. Between 1809 and 1810, Parish constructed a stone warehouse and commercial building on what is today 431 State Street. Seriously, 1809, 800, in the 1800s, 431 State Street. The U.S. General Services Administration confirms that the core of the present building, now known as the Robert C. McEwen U.S. Custom House, dates to that construction period. This is one of the oldest surviving commercial buildings in the city. Don't try to just go up to this building. Please, you've been considered. Use the Google Maps. Way easier. That's what I did. There is even some primary documentation from all of this that comes from the GSA Historic Building Inventory, National Register documentation, and the St. Lawrence County Historical Archives. Parish's store handled imported goods, hardware, trade supplies, and river-shipped commodities. This building physically anchored State Street as a commercial artery. Then, the War of 1812. Might have heard of it. It was declared June 18th. 1812. Augsburg sat directly across from British Fort Wellington in Prescott, Upper Canada. On February 22nd, 1813, British forces under Lieutenant Colonel George MacDonald crossed the frozen St. Lawrence River and attacked Ogdensburg. American forces were commanded by Major Benjamin Forsyth. Historical accounts, they do confirm that American artillery batteries were positioned in Augsburg. British forces drove Americans from the town. Military stores were destroyed. The Americans retreated. This is formally recorded as the Battle of Ogdensburg. The event is documented in the official War of 1812 military records, New York State Archives, the War of 1812 campaign summaries. State Street is the main commercial corridor from the waterfront inland, was directly within the area affected by the occupation and skirmish activity, right? This wasn't myth. This was an active border war zone, a piece of American history, just on a road, on a street that you've driven and walked by many times. Let's talk about Augsburg. when it was officially designated as a U.S. customs port in the 19th century. Before federal income tax existed, man, those were the days. Tariffs were the primary revenue source for the U.S. government. Custom houses were serious institutions. They handled the tariff collection, import documentation, trade enforcement, and legal seizure of goods. The Parish store building evolved into customs-related use. In 1880, the George Hall Corporation, which was a river shipping company, actually owned the property. But then in 1936, acquisition records showed that the United States government purchased the building for $65,000. Pretty heck of a deal, right? Documentation for this transaction still exists in federal property acquisition records and GSA building histories. It was super fun to research. State Street was not just a business district, it was a federal revenue generator. I feel like you can't talk about the street without the day the 18th Amendment took effect, January 17, 1920. The St. Lawrence River became a smuggling corridor. All right, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol historical summaries confirm that by, 1931, liquor smuggling across the St. Lawrence River was a primary enforcement issue for the Ogdensburg station. There was a lot of smuggling methods that included night boat transfers, ice crossings in winter, and concealed cargo in commercial shipments. Federal coordination, documentation, and, prosecution occurred in offices all along State Street. There was even references that we were able to find under the Customs and Border Protection Historical Summaries, National Prohibition-era Federal District Court Archives. State Street was physically part of the enforcement pipeline. And James Reagan, he's wrote a bunch of books from him. I got one or two over here somewhere. Bootleg and something right here. Check this out. Booze, Bad Boys, and Bootleggers. North Country Tales, Grandpa Never Told You. He did come out with another one as well, so check it out. You want to support a local artist? Right here. Right here. Then, let's head over to 315, not the area code, State Street. 315 State Street stands what is now known as the Aker and Evans Law Office. It was built around 1830. Greek Revival architectural style. Originally was constructed as a bank. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1983. This building represents documented financial institutional development right here. Over there in Augsburg. At river commerce, it required credit, loan underwriting, currency exchange, trade financing. Just a brilliant business plan in that time. So State Street, it actually became the formal financial backbone of the region. And then Frederic Remington was born in Augsburg in 1861. He became internationally recognized for his Western-themed paintings and sculptures. 2009, federal legislation designated the post office at 431 State Street as the Frederic Remington Post Office building. This was passed by Congress and signed into law. Congressional records confirm all of this. This permanently links State Street to a nationally recognized American artist. Even has his own museum that maybe you'll check out. Just a different street, different sign. Anyways, then you have the late 19th century fire records in Augsburg documented a destructive commercial fire that led to the Reconstruction using brick and stone. Sanborn Fire Insurance maps from the late 1800s show building materials and density along State Street. These maps, they actually confirm transition from wood to brick structures. The brick corridor you see today actually reflects documented reconstruction after a fire. And this was pretty standard. A lot of these towns would pop up. They'd build them out of wood, whatever they could find with the lumber. In the vast amount of woods, they would cut them down. They would just pop up buildings quickly, made out of wood. Fires would happen, especially in a city. Terrible. You start building brick, brick doesn't burn. And then for some reason, our brains decided to keep putting up houses made of wood. Anyways, State Street is wild. The history of this place is documented in 18th century records. The War of 1812 battle reports, federal customs designation files, prohibition enforcement archives, National Register of Historic Places, Congressional renaming legislation. This isn't just a road. It is one of the most continuously documented corridors in St. Lawrence County. From French missionaries in 1749 to British troops in 1813 to federal customs officers, prohibition agencies, Congressional designation in 2009. State Street has never stopped mattering. And most people, they drive it without even knowing the history of this place. It's absolutely amazing. So that's all we got for this weekend. Thank you enough for taking some time out of your busy day. If there's a street that you want me to cover and dive deep into it, let me know in the comments right about now. Check out all the friends and the links in the descriptions. Helping them helps me, help you, helps everybody. That's all I got this week. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody.